This week, a 27-year-old friend of mine asked me why we celebrate the Easter Vigil. And so my answer tonight comes in three sections. The first is from the 4th century, the second is from the 19th, and the third is from our own day. So chapter 1, an ancient vigil. On this holy night, let me invite you to step back in time with me. In the year 354, Augustine of Hippo was born in a North African town that had been founded 300 years earlier by the Romans. As a young man, he became a professor of rhetoric and ultimately made his way to Milan, the home of the imperial court, the center of the Western Empire. Now, Augustine had an important place in society as a teacher and a speaker, and his biographer writes that in many respects, he served as a kind of minister of propaganda for the Roman emperor. Now, Augustine was also very curious. He'd read the great philosophers, and he began going to sermons preached by the local bishop, Ambrose. Now, Ambrose was also a colorful character. Born into nobility, Ambrose's father may have been a governor in the Roman Empire, and Ambrose himself was the governor of Aemilia Lituria. So he was in this role when he went to calm down a disturbance at the Christian church on the same day that the church was electing a new bishop. So he gave a very eloquent address, but as he was still speaking, one of the people in the congregation shouted, "Ambrose, bishop!" And everybody started chanting, "Ambrose, bishop! Ambrose, bishop!" It seemed like a riot was forming, and so Ambrose quickly left the assembly and he hid out at his friend's house. Now, eventually, he agreed to serve as bishop. Now, Ambrose was an intellectual. Unusually for the time and place, he also was fluent in Greek. And this exposed him to a greater range of Christian theology than if he didn't have those skills. Now, in those days, baptism was so highly regarded by Christians as a total change, a profound mystical passage from death to life, that many people were actually hesitant to get baptized. They just didn't want to give up their sins. And in Augustine's case, did you think of that, all you baptizans today? In Augustine's case, I think the sins had a lot to do with his sexuality, just like his desire to not be restrained in any respect. And really, the Emperor Constantine also felt like this and was only baptized on his deathbed. So although Ambrose's sermons spoke deeply to Augustine, he knew that baptism would upend his life, and so he delayed. And Bishop Ambrose, week after week, would preach, quote, "How long with your delights? How long with your reveling? The day of judgment draws nearer while you postpone this grace. Death approaches. Who shall say then, now I'm not free, I'm busy?" That was how he preached. That's the exact quote from what he said. Now, finally, Augustine felt so drawn by God's love that the pressure became too great. And after talking with a friend, he went out to sit by himself under a fig tree and he prayed. Now, this was a powerful moment, maybe the most important moment of his life. Tears were streaming down his face, and he thought to himself, "How long shall I go on saying, 'Tomorrow, tomorrow'? Why not now?" Then, as he was sobbing, he famously heard the voice of a child repeating over and over, "Take it and read. Take it and read." So Augustine rushed back to where his friend was sitting, and he opened the book of Paul's epistles at random. And this is what he read, quote, "Not in reveling and drunkenness, not in lust. Rather, arm yourselves with the Lord Jesus Christ. Spend no more thought on nature and nature's appetite," end quote. Now later, when Augustine wrote about that, he said that in that instant when the sentence came to an end, quote, "It was as though the light of confidence flooded into my heart and all the darkness of doubt dispelled," end quote. And suddenly, Augustine was a different kind of person, and he went and begged Bishop Ambrose to baptize him. Now, Augustine never forgot what Ambrose taught him about following Jesus. And in those days, so many Christian mysteries were hidden from pagan outsiders, even the Lord's Prayer was not shared until after baptism. And on the feast of the resurrection, the night before Easter, on April 24th, 387, a group of men and women from every social class walked together to the baptistry, a building next to the great cathedral. And passing behind the curtains alone, Augustine, totally naked, went down into a deep pool of water where Ambrose held his shoulders beneath a gushing fountain and baptized him. Later, dressed in pure white robes, the newly baptized entered the main building of the cathedral in a blaze of candlelight as they participated for the first time in the secret mysteries of the risen Christ. Now, for the rest of his life, Augustine never forgot what it felt like to be reborn that night, to put off the old, to put on the new, to rise from death in a way that connected his soul to heaven forever. My second chapter is much shorter. Christendom. Now, before the Edict of Milan in the year 313, that is, for nearly 3 centuries, Christianity was an illegal religion, and most people became Christians as adults. So one could be killed for participating in a service like this Easter Vigil, and they were. Then, in a shocking single generation, Christianity went from being an outlaw religion to being the religion of the empire. And over time, over the decades, over the centuries, practices changed. And parents, fearful for the state of their children's souls, began baptizing them as infants. So the focus of attention changed from the decision adults made to become baptized to the promise parents made to teach their children about Jesus and the church. Another thing about baptizing children is it means that there are no such thing as second-class Christians, that everyone is included in the life of the church. Now, over time, whole societies came to be mostly Christian, and we call this Christendom. And the 19th century philosopher Søren Kierkegaard believed that it was a disaster. According to him, being a Christian means deciding for oneself to follow Jesus. In a world of uncertainty, we have to decide whether to take the leap of faith. So Kierkegaard argued that his fellow citizens believed that they were already Christians because they'd been baptized as infants. But this had no bearing on how they actually lived. Almost everyone around him felt no urgency to become a Christian because they thought they already were. Now, in many of Kierkegaard's writings, he tries to trick his audience out of this illusion so that his readers will put more effort into their spiritual life. He calls for them to become a disciple of Jesus firsthand, not based on someone else's opinion. Now, these days, you all have noticed our society is changing. We are no longer a Christendom society. We no longer take it for granted that almost everyone is Christian. Many people are not baptized as infants. And as a result, the way we worship is changing too. So this is my last chapter, a modern vigil. For centuries, our branch of the church did not celebrate Easter vigils. But in the 20th century, we began to better understand the history of the church. We discovered ancient forms of worship and previously unknown documents that illuminated what Christians in other eras faced. And then in 1946, a Northern California seminary professor named Massey Shepard wrote a paper about the Easter Vigil. His doctoral student, Raymond Hoche Mong, led a church-wide effort to revive the Easter Vigil. And the first Easter Vigil in any Episcopal cathedral, it took place here at Grace Cathedral in 1973 on April 22nd. Now, when people recall the nights of those first 2 vigils in 1973 and 1974, they talk about the new fire that we just witnessed. They had organ and flute music. A local Compline choir from St. Mark's, Berkeley, sang. There were 12 dancers from the Oakland Civic Ballet School. And of course, they remembered so well the people who were baptized and confirmed and received into the church. They also remember the sound of cable car bells and the sound of Nob Hill partygoers outside. You may wonder why I know all this. And let me tell you, the reason is because Raymond Hoshmong, the person who brought back the Easter Vigil, he's a friend of mine. And he'll be 94 in May. And let me tell you, he is still brilliant. We have lunch together a few times every year. And he talks about that night with a twinkle in his eye. He remembers forwarding parts of the service to W.H. Auden for comments and feeling relieved that the poet had no suggestions for him. Raymond describes using the worship service from St. Ambrose as his model. And I wonder what those two friends, Ambrose and Augustine, would think if they knew that in the 21st century, their stained glass windows, which are above the organ pipes on both sides, in this great cathedral, those stained glass windows face each other as if they're still in conversation with one another. And I wonder what Søren Kierkegaard, who was also in the stained glass window on the north aisle, would think of this pioneering effort. Now, when the 1970 prayer book came out, Raymond's new Easter Vigil, with some modifications, became part of our common life in the church. And over time, as fewer and fewer infants are baptized, the service continues to grow in importance. On this holy night, with readings about the world's creation and God's ongoing story with humanity, we experience the way that through water we enter God's new world. So why do we celebrate the Easter Vigil? Because this is how we become part of the Christian family. In N.T. Wright's words, through baptism, we are brought into the story to be an actor in the play which God is writing and producing. And once you are on stage, you are part of the action. So I admire all of you, those who are baptized, those who are confirmed or received on this holy night. I thank God for all of the people here who have come to celebrate this sacred mystery. May you have the courage of Ambrose to change your path. May the same light of confidence that flooded Augustine's heart strengthen yours. May the passion of Kierkegaard to know God for yourself lead you. And may the creativity of Raymond, my friend, help you to see how this tradition may find new life in our own day. And may you take off the old, put on the new, and rise from death in a way that connects your soul to heaven forever.